For most of human history, long before pharmacies existed, people survived on nothing more than the right seeds, a little soil, and the patience to let nature do its work. And here's the part almost nobody tells you. You do not need a farm. You do not need a backyard. You don't even need a yard at all to build that exact same living pharmacy for yourself. A single sunny corner of an apartment, balcony, or windowsill, a handful of containers, and about 20 minutes of care a week is genuinely all it takes. Today I'm handing you 12 of the most powerful healing herbs and vegetables on the planet, every single one small space and container-friendly, ranked from impressive all the way up to essential. And I need you to stay with me until the very end, because the plant sitting at number 1 is something the vast majority of people rip out of their yard and throw away as a worthless weed, without ever realizing what it's actually capable of doing for the human body. So if you've ever reached for a bottle of pills and quietly wondered if there was a gentler way, keep watching, because by the time this video ends, you are going to look at empty pots, cracked sidewalks, and even your own backyard completely differently. Before we get into the list, one quick and important disclaimer. Everything you're about to hear is shared for educational and gardening purposes only. These are not medical claims, and none of this replaces a conversation with a licensed healthcare provider, especially if you're pregnant, nursing, or currently taking prescription medication. Herbs are powerful, and powerful things deserve respect and proper guidance. With that said, if you're the kind of person who loves learning how to grow real, useful things in small spaces, this channel is built exactly for you. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, because I've got a lot more of these container gardening breakdowns coming, and you genuinely do not want to miss what's next. Alright, let's get into it, starting at number 12. Kicking things off at number 12 are cherry tomatoes. And yes, a vegetable absolutely earns its place on a healing list. This isn't just a salad topper. It's one of the most concentrated sources of a compound called lycopene you can grow at home. For your container, choose a 5-gallon fabric grow bag or a sturdy plastic pot with excellent drainage, since tomatoes despise sitting in soggy soil. Fill it with a rich, well-draining potting mix blended with compost. And if you're starting from seed, sow them about 1/4 inch deep in seed trays before transplanting once your first true leaves appear, or simply buy a young starter plant to save yourself a few weeks. Place the container in the sunniest spot you have. Cherry tomatoes want a minimum of 6 hours of direct light, and water deeply and consistently, keeping the soil evenly moist rather than alternating between drenched and bone dry, which causes cracked, split fruit. Feed every 2 weeks with a balanced liquid fertilizer once flowers appear. Harvest begins in around 60 to 70 days, and you'll know they're ready the moment they turn a deep, glossy red and pull away from the vine with the gentlest tug. In the kitchen, eating them raw, warm off the vine, or lightly roasted in olive oil actually increases how much lycopene your body can absorb, since heat and fat help break down the tomato's cell walls. Nutrition researchers have repeatedly pointed to lycopene as a powerful antioxidant that may help protect cells from oxidative stress and support long-term heart and skin health. Here's a fascinating fact for you. Tomatoes were once believed to be poisonous in parts of Europe, all because wealthy families ate off pewter plates high in lead, and the tomato's natural acidity would leach that lead straight into their food, making the tomato an innocent scapegoat for centuries. At number 11, we have spinach, the quiet powerhouse that almost every other leafy green gets compared to. It is dense, fast-growing, and shockingly easy to keep alive in a small container. A shallow but wide pot, something around 10 to 12 inches across, is perfect since spinach roots stay close to the surface. Fill it with a loose, nutrient-rich potting mix, and scatter the seeds about 1/2 inch deep, spacing them roughly 3 inches apart. Spinach loves cooler temperatures, so if you're growing it through a hot summer, give it a spot with some afternoon shade to prevent it from bolting and turning bitter. Water consistently to keep the soil lightly moist at all times, and feed it once with a nitrogen-rich organic fertilizer at planting, since spinach is a notoriously hungry, fast grower. You can begin harvesting the outer leaves in as little as 30 to 40 days, simply snipping what you need and letting the center keep producing for weeks. Eat it raw in a salad, wilted into eggs, or blended straight into a smoothie, since minimal cooking helps preserve its folate content. Spinach is consistently highlighted in nutritional research for its dense concentration of iron, magnesium, and vitamin K, nutrients tied to healthy blood function and strong bones. Here's a fascinating fact. The famous myth that spinach contains an extraordinary amount of iron actually traces back to a 19th century decimal point error in a published nutrition table, a mistake that somehow stuck around for over 100 years and helped inspire an entire cartoon sailor to eat it by the can. Coming in at number 10 is kale, the leafy green that refuses to quit, even in the smallest of containers. It's incredibly forgiving for beginners and produces for months on end. Use a 12 to 14-inch deep container, since kale develops a slightly more established root system than spinach, and fill it with a rich, compost-heavy potting mix. Sow the seeds about a 1/4 inch deep, or transplant seedlings roughly 12 inches apart if you're working with multiple plants in a larger container. Kale wants at least 6 hours of sun, though it actually tolerates partial shade better than most vegetables on this list. Water deeply whenever the top inch of soil feels dry, and feed it every 3 to 4 weeks with a balanced organic fertilizer to keep the leaves thick and dark green. Harvest by picking the outer, older leaves first, leaving the young center growth intact, and you can realistically keep harvesting from a single plant for an entire season. In the kitchen, massaging raw kale leaves with a little olive oil and lemon juice breaks down their tough texture, or you can lightly steam them to soften their bitterness while preserving nutrients. Kale is frequently cited in nutritional science for its density of vitamin K, vitamin C, and plant compounds called glucosinolates, which researchers have linked to the body's natural detoxification processes. Here's a fascinating fact. A light frost doesn't hurt kale at all. It actually improves it, triggering the plant to convert its stored starches into sugars as a natural antifreeze, which is exactly why kale harvested after the first frost of the season tastes noticeably sweeter. At number 9 is sage, the silvery, velvety leafed herb that has been used for centuries as a natural remedy for sore throats and mental clarity. Choose a 5-gallon terracotta or unglazed clay pot, since sage originates from dry Mediterranean hillsides and its roots hate sitting in trapped moisture. Fill the container with a gritty, well-draining mix. Standard potting soil blended generously with sand or perlite works perfectly. Sage is notoriously slow and unreliable from seed, so buying a small nursery start is the easier route. Place it in full, blazing sun, and water only once the soil has dried out completely, since overwatering is the single fastest way to kill this plant. Skip fertilizer almost entirely. Rich soil actually dilutes the essential oils that make sage medicinally useful in the first place. Once established, you can begin harvesting the fragrant leaves anytime, simply snipping stems as needed, and regular light harvesting actually encourages the plant to grow bushier. To make a simple sage tea, steep a small handful of fresh or dried leaves in hot water for about 10 minutes. And gargling it warm is a traditional remedy people have leaned on for irritated throats for generations. Herbal researchers have pointed to sage's naturally occurring compounds as having antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties, which may explain its long-documented use for oral and throat health. Here's a fascinating fact. The word sage comes from the Latin word salvere, meaning to save or to heal, and ancient physicians once believed the plant was so powerful that an old proverb asked, "Why should a man die while sage grows in his garden?" Sliding into number 8 is thyme, one of the smallest herbs on this list with one of the biggest reputations for respiratory support. This tiny, woody-stemmed herb barely needs any room at all. A shallow 6-inch pot, or even a section of a larger mixed herb container works beautifully. Use a sandy, fast-draining potting mix. Thyme genuinely thrives on neglect and poor soil. You can start it from seed by pressing them lightly into the surface without covering, since they need light to germinate, though a nursery cutting will give you usable herb much faster. Place it in full sun and water sparingly, letting the soil dry out completely between waterings, and skip fertilizer entirely unless your leaves start looking pale. Thyme grows in dense little mounds, and you can begin snipping sprigs as soon as the plant is established, usually within 2 months. Steep fresh or dried thyme in hot water for a warm, earthy tea that has traditionally been used to help loosen chest congestion and calm a persistent cough. In the kitchen, it's also a staple in roasted vegetables, soups, and hearty stews. Studies on thyme's essential oil, particularly a compound called thymol, have found notable antimicrobial and antispasmodic properties, part of why thyme extract shows up in some over-the-counter cough remedies to this day. Here's a fascinating fact. Ancient Egyptians used thyme in the embalming process for mummification, believing its powerful, pungent oils would help preserve the body, while Greek soldiers later bathed in thyme-infused water before battle, convinced it gave them courage. Number 7 brings us peppermint, the cooling, refreshing herb that doubles as one of the most effective natural remedies for an upset stomach. Peppermint spreads aggressively through underground runners, so it must be grown in its own dedicated container, never planted directly in open ground, or it will completely take over. A 12-inch plastic pot works well, and fill it with a standard, moisture-retentive potting mix. Peppermint is easiest to start from a small nursery cutting rooted in water, since it roots incredibly quickly this way. Place the pot somewhere with partial sun. Peppermint actually prefers a little afternoon shade in hot climates. And keep the soil consistently moist. This is one plant that does not want to dry out completely. Feed it lightly once a month with a balanced liquid fertilizer to keep the leaves lush. You can begin harvesting once the plant reaches about 6 inches tall, snipping stems just above a leaf node to encourage bushier regrowth. Steep fresh leaves in hot water for a bright, cooling tea that has long been used to ease bloating, nausea, and mild digestive discomfort after a heavy meal. Clinical research on peppermint oil capsules has specifically shown benefits for symptoms associated with irritable bowel syndrome, largely thanks to a compound called menthol, which relaxes the smooth muscle lining the digestive tract. Here's a fascinating fact. Peppermint is actually a naturally occurring hybrid between watermint and spearmint, and it reproduces so aggressively through its root system that it is genetically classified as sterile, meaning nearly every peppermint plant alive today is a clone descended from that original hybrid cross. At number 6 we have garlic, a kitchen staple that doubles as one of the most extensively researched plants in the entire natural health world. It needs surprisingly little space to thrive. A container at least 8 inches deep and roughly the same width per clove is enough, so a single 10-gallon pot can comfortably hold 6 to 8 plants. Fill it with a loose, well-draining potting mix enriched with compost. Break apart a bulb from the grocery store or garden center into individual cloves and plant each one pointed end up, about 2 inches deep and 4 inches apart. Garlic wants full sun and consistent moisture while it's actively growing, though you should ease off watering as the leaves begin to yellow and die back near harvest time. Feed it once at planting with a balanced organic fertilizer, and again lightly in early spring. Garlic is a patient crop, taking anywhere from 6 to 8 months to fully mature, and you'll know it's ready when the lower leaves turn brown while a few green ones remain up top. Cure the harvested bulbs in a dry, well-ventilated space for about 2 weeks before using or storing them. In the kitchen, crushing garlic and letting it rest for 10 minutes before cooking actually activates and preserves more of its beneficial sulfur compounds. Decades of research have connected regular garlic consumption to modest improvements in cholesterol levels and blood pressure, largely attributed to a compound called allicin that forms the moment garlic is crushed or chopped. Here's a fascinating fact. Ancient Olympic athletes in Greece reportedly ate raw garlic before competing, in what may be one of the earliest documented uses of a performance-enhancing supplement in recorded history. Breaking into the top 5 at number 5 is ginger, the warming, spicy root that has settled upset stomachs for thousands of years across nearly every culture on Earth. Because ginger grows horizontally just beneath the surface rather than digging deep, a wide, shallow container, at least 12 inches across, but only about 8 inches deep, is ideal. Fill it with a rich, loose, well-draining potting mix heavy in organic matter. Purchase a plump piece of ginger root from the grocery store, one with visible little green buds, called eyes, and simply press it 1 inch or 2 into the soil, buds facing upward. Ginger loves warmth and humidity but hates direct scorching sun, so a spot with bright, indirect light or dappled afternoon shade works best. Keep the soil consistently moist and feed it every few weeks with a balanced liquid fertilizer to fuel its underground growth. Ginger is slow and steady, requiring around 8 to 10 months before harvest, and you'll know it's ready when the leafy stalks begin to yellow and droop. Simply dig around gently and pull up the knobby, fragrant rhizome. Slice fresh ginger into hot water for a warming tea that has been traditionally used to ease nausea and support digestion. And it's also excellent grated fresh into stir-fries and marinades. Multiple clinical studies have found ginger effective at reducing nausea, including pregnancy-related and motion sickness-related nausea, with researchers pointing to compounds called gingerols as the likely active ingredients. Here's a fascinating fact. Ginger was such a prized commodity along ancient trade routes that in medieval England, a single pound of it could be traded for the cost of an entire live sheep. Number 4 is turmeric, the golden root behind one of the most talked about compounds in modern natural health circles, curcumin. This tropical plant grows similarly to ginger and needs a decently sized home to thrive. Choose a deep 10-gallon fabric grow bag or plastic container, since turmeric develops a fairly substantial underground rhizome system. Fill it with a rich, well-draining potting mix loaded with organic compost. Plant a fresh turmeric rhizome with visible buds about 2 inches deep and place the container somewhere warm with partial sun, since turmeric is a tropical plant that actually appreciates a bit of shade during the harshest part of the afternoon. Water consistently to keep the soil evenly moist, never letting it fully dry out, and feed it monthly with a balanced organic fertilizer through the growing season. Turmeric takes its time, needing around 8 to 10 months to mature, and harvest happens once the tall green leaves begin yellowing and falling over in the fall. Dig up the vibrant orange rhizomes, and either use them fresh, grated straight into curries and warm milk, or slice and dry them to grind into your own homemade powder. The scientific interest around turmeric largely centers on curcumin's potential anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties, though researchers note the body absorbs curcumin far better when it's paired with black pepper and a source of fat, which is exactly why traditional golden milk recipes always include both. Here's a fascinating fact. Turmeric has been used for thousands of years as a natural fabric dye, and it's actually the compound responsible for the distinct yellow color of traditional mustard, making it one of the most widely consumed natural dyes in the world without most people even realizing it. Alright, we've officially made it into the top 3, so if any of these plants have surprised you so far, drop a quick comment and let me know which one you're planting first. I genuinely read every single one. Now let's push forward, because the final 3 plants on this list are, without a doubt, the most powerful ones we're covering today. Taking the number 3 spot is aloe vera, a plant that belongs in absolutely every home with a sunny windowsill, whether or not you consider yourself a gardener. Its thick, gel-filled leaves make it one of the most immediately useful plants you can own. Choose a shallow, wide pot with excellent drainage holes. Aloe despises wet feet more than almost any plant on this list, and use a specialized cactus or succulent potting mix, or make your own by blending regular potting soil with coarse sand and perlite. Plant a small aloe pup or nursery start at the same depth it was previously growing, and place it in a spot with bright, indirect light. A few hours of gentle, direct morning sun is ideal, but harsh afternoon rays can scorch the leaves. Water deeply, then wait until the soil is completely dry before watering again. Aloe stores water in its leaves and genuinely prefers to be neglected rather than fussed over. Skip fertilizer almost entirely, feeding it at most once a year with a diluted succulent formula. Once a leaf reaches full maturity, usually after the plant has several thick leaves established, you can harvest by cutting a lower, outer leaf close to the base, slicing it open, and scooping out the clear inner gel. That fresh gel can be applied directly to minor sunburns, small kitchen burns, and dry skin, offering a cooling, soothing sensation almost instantly. Dermatological research has repeatedly examined aloe vera's gel for its moisturizing and skin-soothing properties, and it remains one of the most studied plants in topical skincare today. Here's a fascinating fact. Aloe vera was reportedly part of Cleopatra's daily beauty routine, and ancient Egyptian texts referred to it as the plant of immortality, a nickname it earned partly because a cut aloe leaf can survive and stay fresh for weeks without any soil or water at all. Coming in at number 2 is tulsi, also known as holy basil, a plant so deeply respected in traditional Indian medicine that it's often grown in a dedicated pot right at the entrance of the home. It is considered one of the finest natural stress-supporting herbs you can grow. Use a 10-inch pot with good drainage, and fill it with a rich, well-draining potting mix blended with compost. Tulsi germinates easily from seed. Simply press the tiny seeds lightly onto the surface of moist soil without burying them, since they need light to sprout. And keep the soil consistently damp until you see seedlings emerge within 1 to 2 weeks. Place the container in full sun. Tulsi genuinely loves heat and struggles in cool, damp conditions. Water whenever the top inch of soil feels dry, and feed it every 3 to 4 weeks with a balanced organic liquid fertilizer to support its rapid, bushy growth. Pinch off any flower buds as they appear to keep the plant producing tender leaves rather than going to seed. You can begin harvesting leaves within about 2 months, and regular pinching actually keeps the plant fuller and more productive all season. Steep a handful of fresh leaves in hot water for a peppery, clove-scented tea that has traditionally been used to help the body manage everyday stress. Tulsi is classified by researchers as an adaptogen, a category of plants studied for their potential to help the body regulate its response to physical and mental stress, and modern research has explored its impact on cortisol levels and overall resilience. Here's a fascinating fact. In many Hindu households, Tulsi is considered sacred enough to be worshipped daily, with families traditionally circling the plant each morning as a small act of devotion before the sun has even fully risen. And taking the absolute crown at number 1, exactly as I promised you at the start of this video, is dandelion, the plant that almost everyone rips out of their lawn without a second thought, completely unaware they are throwing away one of the most nutrient-dense, liver-supportive plants in the entire plant kingdom. Every single part of this plant, the leaves, the flowers, and the root, is edible and useful. Grow it in a deep, 12-inch container since dandelion develops a long, sturdy taproot, and fill it with a loose, well-draining potting mix. Scatter the seeds directly onto the soil surface and press them down gently. They need light to germinate and will typically sprout within 1 to 2 weeks. Place the container in full sun to partial shade. Dandelion is remarkably adaptable and will genuinely tolerate a bit of neglect. Water regularly to keep the soil lightly moist, and you can skip fertilizer almost entirely, since dandelion thrives even in poor soil where other plants struggle. Harvest the young, tender leaves continuously throughout the season for the mildest flavor, and if you want the root, wait until autumn of the first year, then dig deep and pull the entire taproot free. Toss the bitter young leaves into a salad. Sauté them with garlic like you would spinach, or steep the roasted, chopped root in hot water for a rich, coffee-like tea that's been used traditionally to support liver and digestive function. Dandelion greens are remarkably high in vitamin K, vitamin A, and calcium, and researchers have specifically studied dandelion root extract for its potential mild diuretic effect and its traditional role in supporting healthy digestion. Here's a fascinating fact. The name dandelion comes from the French phrase dent de lion, meaning lion's tooth, a reference to the sharp, jagged edges of its leaves, and in France the plant is also affectionately nicknamed pissenlit, a cheeky nod to its long-documented natural diuretic reputation. And that wraps up all 12 healing herbs and vegetables you can grow in containers and small spaces. No yard, no farm, and honestly, no excuses required. Which one are you starting with first? The powerhouse turmeric, the soothing aloe vera, or that humble dandelion sitting in your lawn right now waiting to be rescued? Let me know down in the comments. I read every single one, and I genuinely love seeing which plants you're most excited to try. If this video helped you see your windowsill, balcony, or backyard a little differently today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, because I've got a lot more container gardening and healing herb videos coming your way very soon, and you are absolutely not going to want to miss them. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the very next one. Happy growing!